Toxic people are not always loud, obvious, or easy to identify. Sometimes they appear in subtle ways, through constant negativity, quiet manipulation, disguised criticism, or emotional inconsistency. At first, you may try to understand them, to adjust yourself, to maintain harmony. But over time, you begin to feel drained, confused, and disconnected from your own sense of clarity. The problem is not just their behavior, but how much access you allow that behavior to have over your mind. The first shift begins with awareness. You must see clearly without excuses. When someone repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, disturbs your peace, or pulls you into unnecessary conflict, it is not a misunderstanding, it is a pattern. And patterns, when ignored, become cycles. You cannot change what you refuse to recognize. Seeing the truth of a situation without softening it to protect your emotions is the beginning of taking your power back. Toxic people often rely on reaction. They provoke, they push, they test your limits, not always consciously, but consistently. If you react to every word, every tone, every action, you become part of the cycle that keeps their behavior alive. Your reaction becomes their control. Discipline, then, becomes your strongest defense. The ability to remain calm when provoked, to pause instead of reacting, to observe instead of absorbing, shifts the entire dynamic. In that moment, you are no longer controlled by the situation. Boundaries are not optional, they are necessary. Without them, you leave the door open for repeated harm. Boundaries are not about changing others, but about defining what you will tolerate. Sometimes they are spoken clearly, and sometimes they are enforced through distance. You reduce interaction, limit access, and protect your time and energy without needing validation or approval. This may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to being available or agreeable, but discomfort is often the price of self-respect. Detachment is another form of strength. Not everything deserves your emotional investment. When you stop taking every action personally, you begin to see that much of what toxic people do reflects their internal state, not your worth. This understanding allows you to remain steady even in difficult interactions. You listen without absorbing, you see without reacting, and you maintain control over your inner state. There will be moments when distance becomes the only healthy option. Walking away does not mean you are weak or incapable of handling the situation. It means you value your peace more than unnecessary struggle. Not every relationship can be repaired, and not every person is willing to change. Holding on to what consistently harms you only delays your growth. Your focus must return to yourself. Strengthen your mind, protect your energy, and surround yourself with people who bring clarity rather than confusion. The more grounded you become, the less influence toxic behavior has over you. You stop seeking validation from the wrong places and start building stability from within. Dealing with toxic people is not about controlling them, fixing them, or proving anything to them. It is about mastering your response, protecting your peace, and choosing where your energy goes, so that no matter who stands in front of you, your state of mind remains your own, steady and unshaken. Not every battle deserves your energy, yet many people spend their lives reacting to every challenge, every insult, every disagreement as if it demands a response. This constant engagement slowly drains your mental strength, leaving you exhausted without realizing where your energy has gone. The truth is, energy is one of your most valuable resources, and how you choose to spend it shapes the quality of your life. When someone provokes you, criticizes you, or tries to pull you into unnecessary conflict, the immediate urge is to respond, to defend, to prove something. This reaction feels natural, but it is rarely wise. Not every opinion deserves your attention, and not every argument deserves your voice. Engaging in every situation gives others control over your emotional state, allowing them to dictate how you feel and where you focus your mind. There is strength in restraint. Choosing not to react is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of control. It shows that you are aware of what truly matters and what does not. When you pause and observe instead of reacting, you create a gap between stimulus and response, and within that gap lies your power. You begin to see clearly which situations align with your values and which are simply distractions. Many battles are fueled by ego rather than purpose. The need to be right, to be heard, or to win can trap you in conflicts that offer no real growth. These battles consume time and energy without giving anything meaningful in return. Letting go of the need to prove yourself frees you from unnecessary struggle and allows you to focus on what truly contributes to your progress. Protecting your energy requires awareness and discipline. You must learn to recognize when a situation is worth your attention and when it is not. This means setting internal boundaries, deciding what you will engage with and what you will ignore. It also means accepting that not everyone will understand your silence, and not everyone needs to. Your energy should be invested in growth, in meaningful connections, in building something that adds value to your life. When you stop wasting it on trivial conflicts, you gain clarity, focus, and peace. You begin to move with intention rather than reaction, choosing your battles carefully and acting only when it truly matters. Protect your inner peace like a sacred space. Not everyone is allowed inside. In a world filled with noise, opinions, and constant demands for your attention, your mind can easily become overcrowded with influences that do not serve you. Inner peace is not something that happens by chance. It is something you actively guard, something you choose to prioritize even when it feels difficult. Without protection, it becomes vulnerable to negativity, judgment, and emotional chaos brought by others. Many people allow others unrestricted access to their thoughts and emotions. They absorb every comment, every criticism, every shift in someone else's mood as if it were their responsibility. Over time, this creates internal tension, anxiety, and confusion. When you treat your inner world as a sacred space, you begin to understand that access must be earned, not freely given. Not everyone deserves to influence how you feel or how you see yourself. Boundaries become your first line of defense. These are not walls built out of fear, but clear decisions about what you will accept and what you will not tolerate. You decide how much of your time, attention, and emotional energy others are allowed to receive. This may mean limiting conversations that drain you, stepping away from environments that disturb your balance, or simply choosing silence when engagement would only create more disturbance. It is also important to be mindful of what you consume daily. The words you hear, the content you watch, and the people you surround yourself with all shape your inner state. If you continuously expose yourself to negativity, your peace will slowly erode. Protecting your space means being intentional about these inputs, choosing what aligns with clarity, growth, and calmness rather than chaos. Another aspect of protecting your inner peace is learning not to internalize everything. People often project their own insecurities, frustrations, and unresolved issues onto others. If you absorb these projections, you carry burdens that were never yours. By observing without attaching, you maintain your stability even in challenging interactions. Silence becomes a powerful tool. You do not need to respond to every situation or defend yourself against every misunderstanding. Sometimes, preserving your peace means letting things pass without reaction. It means valuing your calmness more than the need to be understood or validated. When you treat your inner peace as sacred, your decisions begin to change. You become more selective with your relationships, more disciplined with your thoughts, and more intentional with your energy. You stop chasing approval and start protecting alignment, allowing only what nurtures your mind and strengthens your sense of self-toxicity thrives on reaction, feeding off emotional responses like anger, frustration, and defensiveness. It gains strength when you engage without awareness, when you allow someone else's behavior to dictate your state of mind. The more you react impulsively, the more control you hand over, often without realizing it. What begins as a small interaction can quickly escalate, not because of the situation itself, but because of the energy you invest in it. When faced with toxic behavior, the natural instinct is to respond immediately. You feel the urge to correct, to defend, to prove your point. This reaction feels justified, even necessary, but it often plays directly into the dynamic that fuels toxicity. The other person may not be seeking resolution or understanding. They may simply be seeking a reaction. Your emotional response becomes the reward that keeps the cycle alive. Awareness changes everything. The moment you recognize that not every comment requires a response, you begin to break the pattern. Instead of reacting, you observe. You notice the tone, the intention, the underlying energy behind the words. This awareness creates distance between you and the situation, allowing you to choose your response rather than being controlled by your emotions. Emotional discipline becomes your strongest tool. It is the ability to feel without immediately acting, to remain steady even when provoked. This does not mean suppressing your emotions, but rather managing them with clarity. When you stay calm, you disrupt the expected pattern. Toxic behavior often relies on escalation, and without your participation, it loses its momentum. Silence can be more powerful than words. Choosing not to engage denies toxicity the reaction it seeks. It sends a message without confrontation, without conflict, without giving away your energy. This silence is not weakness. It is control in its purest form. It shows that you are not easily influenced, not easily provoked, and not willing to be pulled into unnecessary battles. Detachment also plays a crucial role. When you stop taking things personally, you reduce the emotional charge behind the interaction. You begin to see that toxic behavior often reflects the other person's internal state rather than your worth. This shift in perspective weakens the impact of their words and actions, allowing you to remain grounded. Over time, consistent non-reaction changes the dynamic. Toxic individuals either lose interest or are forced to confront their own behavior without the reinforcement of your engagement. You preserve your energy, maintain your clarity, and strengthen your ability to navigate difficult interactions without losing control of your self-distance is not weakness. It is wisdom applied with courage. Many people are taught to stay, to endure, to keep giving even when it costs them their peace. They believe that walking away is a sign of failure, that creating space means they are not strong enough to handle the situation. But in reality, distance requires a level of clarity and strength that not everyone is willing to embrace. It demands that you see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Choosing distance often means going against your emotions. You may feel attached, loyal, or responsible for someone who continuously disrupts your balance. Part of you wants to hold on, to fix things, to make it work despite the damage it causes. Wisdom, however, recognizes patterns. It sees repeated disrespect, constant negativity, and emotional exhaustion for what they truly are. It understands that staying in such an environment does not build strength. It slowly erodes it. Courage comes into play when you act on that understanding. It is not easy to step back, especially when history, feelings, or expectations are involved. Creating distance may lead to misunderstanding, judgment, or even criticism from others who do not see what you see. It may feel uncomfortable, unfamiliar, and at times even lonely, yet this discomfort is often the price of protecting your well-being. Distance creates space for clarity. When you remove yourself from constant influence, you begin to think more clearly. You are no longer reacting to every situation in the moment. Instead, you observe from a place of calmness. This shift allows you to evaluate relationships and situations without emotional pressure, making decisions that align with your long-term peace rather than short-term comfort. It also restores your energy. Being constantly exposed to negativity or conflict drains you in ways that are not always immediately visible. By stepping back, you give yourself the opportunity to recover, to rebuild your mental and emotional strength. You begin to feel lighter, more focused, and more in control of your own state of mind. Distance does not mean hatred, nor does it mean you stop caring. It simply means you care about yourself enough to not tolerate what harms you. It is a decision rooted in self-respect, not avoidance. You are not running away from the situation, you are choosing a healthier position within it. Over time, this decision reshapes how others interact with you. People begin to understand that your presence is not something to be taken for granted. You become more intentional with your time, your energy, and your connections, allowing only what aligns with your values to remain close to you. Your self-respect must be louder than your need to be accepted. Many people move through life seeking approval, adjusting their behavior, opinions, and even their identity to fit into spaces where they feel they must earn belonging. This desire to be accepted is natural, but when it becomes stronger than your sense of self, it leads to compromise after compromise until you no longer recognize who you are. The need for acceptance often shows up in subtle ways. You stay silent when you should speak, agree when you actually disagree, tolerate behavior that makes you uncomfortable, and ignore your own values just to avoid rejection. In those moments, you may gain temporary approval, but you lose something far more important: your integrity. Self-respect requires you to remain aligned with your principles, even when it creates discomfort or distance between you and others. When self-respect is strong, it acts as an internal guide. It tells you when something is not right, when a boundary is being crossed, when you are being treated in a way that does not match your worth. Ignoring that voice weakens your foundation. Listening to it, even when it is difficult, strengthens your character and builds confidence that does not rely on external validation. There is a cost to choosing self-respect over acceptance. Not everyone will understand your decisions. Some people may label you as distant, difficult, or uncooperative simply because you no longer conform to their expectations. This reaction can be uncomfortable, especially if you are used to being liked or approved of. But acceptance that requires you to shrink yourself is not genuine connection, it is conditional approval. True confidence comes from knowing that you can stand alone if necessary. It comes from trusting your judgment, honoring your boundaries, and valuing your own opinion even when it differs from the majority. This does not mean rejecting others or isolating yourself, but it means that your identity is not dependent on their acceptance. Over time, Prioritizing self-respect changes the quality of your relationships. You begin to attract people who appreciate you for who you truly are, not for the version of you that seeks approval. Your interactions become more honest, more balanced, and more meaningful because they are built on authenticity rather than compromise. When your self-respect becomes louder than your need to be accepted, you stop negotiating your worth for temporary belonging. You stand firm in your values, make decisions with clarity, and move through life with a sense of stability that cannot be easily shaken by the opinions or expectations of others. The way people treat you reflects them. The way you respond defines you. Every interaction carries two layers. One reveals the character, habits, and inner state of the other person, while the second reveals your level of awareness and control. When someone acts with disrespect, negativity, or manipulation, it is often an expression of their own unresolved issues, insecurities, or learned behavior. It speaks about their perspective, their discipline, and the way they navigate the world. It is easy to take such behavior personally. The mind quickly turns outward actions into internal judgments, making you question your worth or react defensively. But not everything directed at you truly belongs to you. Many people project their frustrations, anger, and dissatisfaction onto others because they lack the ability to process it within themselves. Recognizing this creates a powerful shift. You begin to separate your identity from their behavior, reducing the emotional weight of the interaction. Your response, however, is entirely within your control. This is where your character becomes visible. Reacting impulsively, matching negativity with negativity, or allowing emotions to take over may feel justified in the moment, but it often leads to regret and further conflict. A controlled response requires awareness. It asks you to pause, to observe your emotions without being driven by them, and to choose your actions deliberately. Responding with calmness does not mean accepting poor treatment. It means addressing situations with clarity rather than chaos. Sometimes the right response is silence, refusing to engage in unnecessary conflict. Sometimes it is setting a clear boundary, expressing what is acceptable and what is not without aggression. Other times it is simply walking away, understanding that not every situation deserves your time or energy. This approach preserves your inner stability. When your behavior is not dictated by others, you maintain control over your state of mind. You become less reactive, more grounded, and more focused on what truly matters. Over time, this consistency builds strength. You develop the ability to navigate difficult interactions without losing your balance. People may continue to act according to their nature, but your response shapes your experience. It determines whether situations escalate or dissolve, whether you carry negativity forward or leave it behind. By choosing awareness over impulse, you protect your peace and reinforce your values, allowing your actions to reflect discipline rather than reaction.